Hey guys, Brian from Boas here. There's one thing in reptile keeping that we all depend on, and if there is a change to this could doom the reptile hobby as we know it. So this is what really keeps me up at night. Today I'm going to talk all about this, how we can hopefully prevent this from happening. So be sure to stay tuned. So first of all, I wanted to make an announcement that I have some upcoming presentations at herpetological societies, so you can come see Brian Boas live, so to speak. And if you're in the Northern California area, there's one that's bound to be close by, so I hope to see you there in the next couple months ahead. So the first presentation is on May 18th at the Central Valley Herpetological Society in Manteca, California, at the Manteca Library, I believe at 7 p.m. It's a Saturday night, so it'll be a good way to spend your Saturday night. I'm going to be giving a presentation entitled Boa Constrictor 101, all you need to know about the world's most captivating pet snake. And so I'm going to be talking all about the different things in boa breeding and keeping, what I've learned, working with these animals for many years. And I will also be able to answer all your questions. I'll also have a number of my animals there to show you different types of boas. So hope to see you there on May 18th. If you're in the Central Valley, also I'm going to be presenting the same presentation on June 8th at the Northern California Herpetological Society in Sacramento, California, also at the Sacramento Library. I believe at the same time, 7 p.m. on a Saturday, although make sure you check out to make sure I didn't give you the wrong time. But June 8th in Sacramento, the NorCal Herpetological Society, Boa Constrictor 101. So hope to see you there if you're in California, or even if you're not in California and you want to make a road trip, California in the spring, a lot of great scenery. Come out and also see the Brian Boas live in the next couple months ahead. So anyway, now back to the topic at hand, what can doom the reptile industry. And you're probably thinking I'm going to be talking about the Lacey Act or some kind of restrictive legislation. And although these are certainly things we have to be worried about, this is not what I'm talking about today. As far as the laws, yes, there's always people who want to take away your right to keep reptiles for their own ridiculous and harmful agendas. Not going to even get into the details there, but we're lucky that we have something called the USARC, or United States Association of Reptile Keepers, that advocates for the rights of reptile keepers and promotes responsible reptile keeping. And if you remember back about 10 years ago, there were amendments passed to the Lacey Act, which basically banned the interstate transport of ultimately 9 large constrictors. The boa constrictor, fortunately, was never affected, but several different types of pythons and anacondas were banned from interstate transport, which effectively stopped the reptile trade, shipping across state lines, which was a huge, basically would have ended the captive propagation of those types of animals. And I giving you a hint at what I'm worried about. They didn't actually ban keeping the animals, they just banned shipping them across state lines. So the topic of the video is shipping, and we really need to be worried about the shipping possibilities of reptiles going away, because shipping is really what reptile keepers depend on. If I look at my own reptile sales and selling and buying, about 99% of the animals that I own and that I've sold have been shipped, many of them across state lines. So it's really important that we have an economical, convenient, safe, quick way to ship our reptiles. And the vast majority of reptiles these days are shipped by FedEx. In fact, it's really the only way that you can ship reptiles, with the exception of air freight or, like a private courier, which is a lot less convenient and more expensive. But what has really revolutionized the reptile industry is the availability of this shipping. And there are actually several services, including Ship Your Reptiles and Reptiles Express, but these are collective FedEx accounts, and they've done all the work and they've cleared the account to ship reptiles. So all that you have to do is go register to get an account, and you can start shipping the next day. You can print the labels on your home computer. You can buy the labels with a credit card. You just box up your animals and you take them down to the FedEx, and it's a great way to ship, and it's very convenient, and it works really well for pretty much everybody. So this is the only way you can ship reptiles. You can't ship them in US mail, you can't ship them by UPS, just by FedEx. So it's kind of worrisome that we just have this one real possibility. FedEx, like most shipping, has kind of gotten very, very, very expensive in the last few years, just like everything else. I mean, it's based on fuel costs, that's a lot of the expense. So like the cost of fuel is going way up, the cost of shipping is going to go up. For example, right now to ship a typical size, 12 by 9 by 6 styrofoam lined box, I'm paying about $90 in the US for most places, other than close by in California. $90 to ship. It only cost me about $40, 5, 6, 7 years ago when I first started shipping a lot of shipments. So it's more than doubled in that time. And, so that's certainly something to be concerned about. And so $90, if you're talking about a $1,000 reptile, $90 isn't that huge of an amount. So if you can afford, a $1,000 top shelf red-tailed boa, you can afford the $90 to also ship the animal. However, if you're just starting out, like, most of the people entering this hobby are young people that don't have a lot of money, and they're not looking at $1,000 animals. They're looking at animals that, until relatively recently, were like $30, $40 animals. And now, unfortunately, those same animals, things like corn snakes, king snakes, a lot of colubrids, several different types of lizards. Most of these animals are now close to $100 probably. So those prices have gone up. But if you have to pay $100 to ship a $100 animal, most kids don't have this type of money. And they're not going to be able to get that animal just because of the expensive shipping cost. Hopefully maybe they can get an animal at a pet store or a reptile show. And if most beginners are not looking for really high-end animals that are really hard to find, so they'll be able to get it that way. But any beginner that wants a reptile is going to have to pay this very expensive price to ship their animal. So if we lose the beginners, basically the hobby is going to become extinct, because some of these beginners are going to go on to become more advanced keepers, and then ultimately breeders who are perpetuating the hobby. I mean, I remember myself, $100 back in the late 80s, early 90s. That was a hell of a lot of money for a teenager to come up with for a reptile. And even back then, there were very few really nice animals that were under about $100 or so. Even most colubrids were in that ballpark. This is actually, I'm talking about local prices, kind of my own experience. I didn't actually have any reptiles shipped to me until probably the early 90s, this is when people really started shipping reptiles by FedEx. So all it would need to happen is that FedEx decides they're no longer going to allow reptile shipments, and that would be a really bad thing for reptile keeping, because it would really limit the possibilities of shipping animals and getting new animals and selling animals to people online. It would really be probably the worst thing that can happen, other than an outright ban on all species of reptiles, which is pretty unlikely. So this is really what keeps me up at night, because as a reptile breeder, I really don't have another viable option to ship reptiles. There actually is one other viable option, and it's called air freight. And basically you use Delta Airlines or another airline that provides this service. You need to box up your animals, get them to your nearest airport, and then they're shipped to the nearest airport to the person on the receiving end. And this is possible. However, it's a lot less convenient to go to an airport to have to drop off and pick up animals. For example, my nearest airport is San Francisco International Airport. It's about an hour and a half on, if there's no traffic. If there's traffic, it can be over 2 hours or even longer each way. Okay, so I have to drive all the way down there. A lot of money for gas. Got to pay close to 10 bucks for the Golden Gate Bridge toll. So it's a lot of time and money just to use air freight to, to ship animals. The nearest FedEx ship center is a lot closer to me. I can go there on, my lunch break, drop a package off. Much more convenient. It's also much more convenient for the recipient. They don't have to go to the nearest airport. They just have to go to their nearest FedEx ship center to pick up the animal. Or in some cases, the animal can actually be delivered right to their home door to door, although I don't offer that service just because it's a little more high risk for the animals. But, the FedEx ship center is usually pretty close to most people, so a lot more convenient than going to your nearest airport. So FedEx doesn't, I'm guessing they don't make a huge amount on reptile shipments. Even if we're talking about probably over 1 million shipments a year, that's probably a small piece of their whole business. I don't know offhand the statistics of FedEx business, but they ship all kinds of stuff. So I'm guessing that the reptile shipments are a small amount of money. And there are a lot of potential scenarios where shipping reptiles could not end up not so well for FedEx and for their employees, which I'm going to discuss in a minute. And all of it would need to happen is somebody does something wrong and it leads to one of these unfortunate scenarios and FedEx decides to pull the plug, and that's it. And now we don't really have a viable option for shipping reptiles conveniently. So what are some of these scenarios that could lead to the end of reptile shipping? Well, if somebody just doesn't follow the rules and improperly packages their animals, maybe an animal could escape and there might be consequences that aren't so great. So one of the great things about Ship Your Reptiles and Reptile Express is they not only offer the shipping service, they offer support with all the supplies. You can buy these boxes. So this is my standard box I use for shipping baby boas. It's a 12 by 9 by 7 or 6 rather, and you can see it's a styrofoam lined cardboard box. Okay, it's important that it be styrofoam lined box. You have to agree to that. That's the only way you can do it. It's got these perishable notices, and here it says harmless wildlife, live animals. You check off reptile, and then this guy's trying to get away. Then here you can see Lacey Act labeling. Okay, and this is very important. You have to write the species of reptile that's in the box. Not just the common name, but the scientific name. And if you don't do this, it's a violation of the Lacey Act. Okay, so don't violate the Lacey Act. Please write the identification of your reptile on the box. And then another important thing is you can only ship certain reptiles. Obviously, you can't ship venomous animals. Okay, no venomous shipping for obvious reasons. But what I'm concerned about is that somebody decides, well, I got a cobra, but it's real cooperative and docile. They're not going to know it's not just a garter snake or python. So they put a cobra in the box and ship it. And then it escapes and bites one of the FedEx workers. Who could even cause death. That would be a disaster. I'm sure that if that happened, FedEx would pull the plug on reptile shipping lightning fast. It'd be the end for reptile shipping. And when you're talking about probably thousands and thousands of people are shipping reptiles by FedEx, probably millions of shipments a year, it's bound to, some person is going to do this. They're going to ship a prohibited species in the box. And then another thing that might happen is a reptile might escape from the box. When you ship in the box, you don't just put the reptile directly in the box. It's got to be in either a bag that's secured or like a deli style plastic container that's secured. So basically double containment, and the box has to be securely taped with tape along all of these seams, okay? But if somebody doesn't do this properly and a reptile gets out, even if it's not a venomous species, it could result in very negative consequences. Ultimately, could lead to the end of shipping as we know it by FedEx, which would be a terrible thing. So please, 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 if you're going to ship reptiles, ship responsibly and follow all the rules. Go to the different websites that offer shipping like Reptiles Express and Ship Your Reptiles. Make sure you follow all of the rules. They have articles on how you can ship up package reptiles. I've even done videos before on how to properly ship and package reptiles. Make sure you watch those videos. As also, you need to responsibly use a heat pack. Okay, use a heat pack only if it's within a certain temperature range. If it's too cold, you don't want to ship. If it's too hot, you don't want to ship. It's really important for the welfare of the animals that you follow these rules and you ship responsibly. And if you follow these rules, it's very, very safe to ship reptiles. Okay, very, very rarely does anything ever happen that causes any kind of harm to the reptiles or to the FedEx employees. I've even had a couple experiences with people shipping me reptiles that, you know, really left me very much annoyed and very concerned about possibility that, you know, the whole thing could come falling down to pieces. You know, one shipment, the guy shipped a pair of boas. He didn't even ship them by FedEx. He used UPS, the United Parcel Service, which is completely against their rules. They don't allow shipping of reptiles. He, you know, put the boas, which were, you know, probably 4 to 5 foot adult boas, put them in pillowcases, and then rather than using a styrofoam lined box, he used a leftover Pampers diaper box with no styrofoam lining. Just put the pillowcases with the snakes in there, no heat pack, and then just taped it shut and sent it to me. He didn't even tell me when it was going to be sent. Just this Pampers box showed up one day from UPS and the snakes were inside. So obviously I was not happy with the shipping experience from the seller. I don't even remember who it was. I don't think the guy is selling anymore. He was probably just getting out of the hobby, so it's not important. But not a happy camper. Luckily the boas were fine and they went on to actually breed for me the following year, so it was a good experience that way, and the boas hopefully got into a better home. So that was one thing that happened. Another time I bought you know, 4 or 5 baby boas from somebody, and they shipped by FedEx and they used the styrofoam lined box, but they put the boas in way too small secondary containers within the box. So they were using deli cups, and you know, you can get deli cups that are maybe like 8 inches in diameter and like, you know, 5 inches deep, and that's a big enough size for holding a baby boa. But this person used really small ones that were maybe 4 inches across and like 3 inches deep, and these boas were like 2 years old. You know, they were on the dwarf side. They were, you know, maybe 3 feet long, but the person stuffed them in this little tiny deli cup. I couldn't believe it. And I opened the package, and there were the deli cups, and one of them was stuffed in there, could like barely move, you know. I don't think he used air holes either, so luckily the boa didn't suffocate in there. But the other one, the deli cup had just opened up, and the boa was loose in the styrofoam lined box. Luckily it didn't get out of the box, but it was loose in the box. Definitely not what you want to have happen. So you know, this is 2 out of I don't know how many shipments I've had. I've probably had, you know, several dozen at least shipments to my house of reptiles or to the FedEx ship center. But you know, this is a, you know, I've had 2 experiences like this. If we're talking about, you know, possibly 1 million shipments a year, I'm sure there's other experiences like this. You know, let me know if you've had a negative experience with somebody improperly packaging your reptiles for shipment. But all it takes is for one of these things to go bad, and that's probably going to be the end. You know, the animal rights people would love this. They want any excuse they can to further their extremist agenda against reptile keeping. And so please, please, please do not improperly package your reptiles. And, you know, fingers crossed, we'll be able to still ship by FedEx, you know, for at least the near future. And the reptile hobby can live on. So anyway, that's my #1 worry about the reptile hobby, the end of FedEx shipping. Please let me know what you think about this. Am I, you know, is this reasonable or something else what you worry about? But I'd love to hear in the comments what you think. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, enjoy your boas.